When the lion turtle appears near the end of Avatar: The Last Airbender, it is a baffling, beguiling moment. But there is a lot more going on here than Aang simply being granted this perfect superpower that he can use to defeat Ozai. I'd first like to say that there is more going on here than it even being a superpower. What is this exactly? The Legend of Korra talks about this quite well, I believe. It is energy bending. It is the power not just to bend an element, but to bend the energy that flows through the world, that flows through all things. It is the root that these different elements, earth, fire, water, air, are simply the branches of. Avatar: The Last Airbender talks about this a bit. Korra expands on it. And it takes us into the spirit world, which is just the purest manifestation of energy. It's less a physical world than just a world made up and manifested by this pure energy, so that world can be transformed in a way that the physical world can't even be. I think that in Korra makes perfect sense. And that this power is available to Aang makes sense as well in the end of Avatar. It goes back to the revival of the spiritual, the revival of the mythic, the revival of all of these ancient primordial elements in the world that have been lost. And why are they lost? They're lost for a lot of reasons. They're lost because of war and conflict and the constant turmoil that makes achieving this profound, pristine spiritual connection difficult. But such a connection is also hard to find in this world because the world is messy and the world is complicated. Korra emphasizes this a lot. Korra is specifically a show about modernity. It is specifically a show about how the influence of all of these different value systems and all of these different worldviews make this experience of living and being in the modern world difficult and fragmented and fractured. There is not this simple, singular connection to these spiritual origins. And Aang faces a similar problem. He does attain a kind of spiritual connection with his past lives, but they all provide him with information based on their own experiences. They're doing their best, and they do want to help him, but ultimately they do not provide Aang with the information that he is looking for. He is confronted with all of these perspectives of the immediate past and is satisfied with none of them. So he looks deeper. He looks into this more archaic, mystic past beyond the reach of the previous and current generations. It is important to note when exactly he receives the power to energy bend. It is only when he completely cuts himself off from his group, Aang being with Katara, Sokka, Zuko, all the rest, only when he cuts himself off from them, and even cuts himself off from all of the immediately previous avatars, only when all of those stimuli are blocked is he able to form this unvarnished connection to this mythic past. Why does this matter? It matters because the mythic past is not simply grand, it's not simply magnificent, it's not simply a world that exists beyond the constraints of day-to-day life nowadays, beyond external, superficial experiences nowadays, though it is all that, but because it reaches back to something original, something core, something fundamental. I realize this is all a little abstract and a little arcane, and I'm sorry for that. But what I'm focusing on is simply what Guru Patik talks to Aang about, how the greatest illusion in the world is the illusion of separation. It is the same lesson that Aang learns at the Banyan Grove tree in episode 204. These trees look different. They look like they are completely separate organisms, but in reality, they are all one. They are all connected. Think also about what Iroh says concerning the four elements in 209, Bitter Work. They are, in appearance, separate, but in actuality, they are all one. They are all united, and the Avatar is specifically a powerful figure, not simply because they're a chosen hero, but because they have the capacity to unite these different elements, these different forms of thinking. There is a oneness, a unity to these different elements, to these different organisms, to all that exists in the external world, the world of appearances, that is not immediately clear, but through the desire to look beyond that world, to look past these superficial differences back to a core original essence that exists in all of them, one is able to transcend these different variations. This is fundamental to a lot of quote-unquote Eastern religious thinking. It's apparent in especially Taoism and Buddhism, and Hinduism as well. This idea that while differences aren't unimportant, and while they aren't completely irrelevant, they are only on the level of appearances. They are only on the level of what we can externally, empirically experience. When we go into the inner essence, the inner core of, say, firebending or waterbending or anything, fire, water, earth, air, you, me, earth, sky, trees, volcanoes, whatever, there is this singular force, this singular unified essence that exists. There is this root out of which all things grow. Now, again, I apologize for getting too much into mysticism here, but I think there is an intentional, innate difficulty to explaining any of this clearly, because as the Tao Te Ching puts it clearly, the Tao, for instance, is not clear. What is the Tao? Can it be named? No, it can't. It can't be called hot or cold. It can't be called soft or hard, because those are all external characteristics. And the Tao, which innately relates to this life force, this energy, what is often called qi in China, for instance, is everywhere. It's omnipresent. So describing it based on any of these external characteristics is inevitably limiting. What does all this have to do with Avatar? Aang enters this profound meditative state, is what I'm saying. He is able to, by blocking out everything else, to go back all the way to this fundamental, ancient, eternal oneness This is why he can gain the power to energy bend, which acts on all of this energy not through the division between the elements, but on this older, more primordial, more essential, undivided state. The lion turtle, as a manifestation of the ancient, the united and harmonious, is a fitting choice to be the one to give Aang this kind of power. I do think mysticism and spirituality are important to this world. I have seen so often bending try to be reduced to a kind of science. And I don't really agree with that. There certainly is a kind of scientific method to it, in that there are empirical principles that can be learned and ascertained and studied. There are hypotheses that can be tested because it is a physical thing in the world, and so it is subject to this scientific empiricist methodology. But nonetheless, in Avatar, that's insufficient to really explain this other side of bending. Why can waterbending heal, for instance? It's not just normal water, it is specifically a spiritual, mystic property that the waterbender has, relating more to this other side of waterbending, to the symbolic significance of water as being this soothing and restorative force. Thus, waterbending has the ability to heal. That side of this world, that enchanted side, that side that imbues bending with more than just merely properties that make sense on a literal scientific perspective, is essential to what the show is doing. And I don't think that should be underappreciated in Avatar or in Korra. In Korra, we see even more explicitly that the lion turtle is this fundamentally ancient creature. It belongs to this primordial era, long before the Avatar existed. They are perhaps the oldest creatures in the world. Even Rava refers to the lion turtle as Ancient One. These creatures are as close as one can get to that fundamental, undivided point of primordial oneness, primordial unity, before this division into different species, different elements, different categories. And there is a danger in completely enclosing oneself off in that realm of the past. It is the danger of someone like John Ruskin, who idealizes the past to an extent that is understandable as a protest against the mechanistic, commodified world of industrial society, but nonetheless, in that worldview, there is no hope for the future. There is no hope for renewal. There is no hope for the new. The only hope for the future can be if it's just a rote repetition of the past. And this can be dangerous. Far more promising is the William Morris idea that is very much based in Ruskin, very much based on the need for this historical, even mythic sense to repair and revitalize the damage caused by the fracturing of experience and community in the modern transactional world, but nonetheless orients that understanding of the past toward the future, toward trying and testing out new ideas and new opportunities and new perspectives that draw back to the past but are not defined by it. Aang ultimately has to make the choice to not kill the Fire Lord. That is his choice to make. No one forces him to make that choice. It is the choice that he, going based on all this spiritual wisdom, decides based on his own worldview oriented toward the future that he needs to make. It draws from the past, but is not simply beholden to it. And I think that matters, and I think that's fundamental for thinking about how the show characterizes the past in general and the Lion Turtle and the Lion Turtle's gifts more specifically. So thank y'all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching Avatar. Great show. I know this got a bit heavy. I hope what I said was at least partly clear. Tune in soon for next analysis. We'll be coming soon. Promise you that. Thank y'all again. Adios, comrades.